Most people fail at budgeting. But the good news is it's not because budgeting is impossible, it's because they're doing it wrong. I'm a financial planner. I'm going to teach you exactly how I do my personal budget and why I think it's more effective and much easier than the way most people make it. Hey everyone, I'm James Conole, founder of Root Financial, and I'm here to teach you how to get more out of life with your money. I'm a financial planner, which means naturally I've helped hundreds of people work through their budget, and what I've seen is without fail, the way most people have been doing it consistently fails over and over and over again. And not only does it fail, but it's incredibly frustrating. It's frustrating because people try with the best intentions and then something goes wrong and they give up. And then they get motivated again and they try with the best intentions, but something goes wrong and they give up. And what I found after trying dozens of different techniques for myself and dozens of different apps and dozens of different ways of doing it is everything is doing it the wrong way. What I found is a system that works is something that works with our natural tendencies, not against them. And that's exactly what I want to show you in today's video. To start though, let's walk through why budgeting is so difficult. Now there's a couple reasons, but one of the first reasons I see budgeting being so difficult is this, is let's say you have your monthly income coming in. So taxes have been paid, maybe 401k contributions have come out, but something hits your bank account. Let's just use $10,000 for a nice round number. Well, that money comes in and it's like, oh my goodness, I've got a lot of money that I can now go spend. I have $10,000 that I can use to go out to eat, and I can use to go play golf, and I can use to go do whatever. And that's the way our mind thinks, is whatever's in the account is naturally there for us to spend. Well, the hard part is most of those dollars are already committed to something. Maybe it's a mortgage payment, maybe it's a phone bill, maybe there's utilities, whatever it is, it's not as if that full $10,000 is fully ours. Most of it's already been committed to things that we're gonna have to pay on a recurring basis. So the lack of having the ability to understand what of this can I actually spend versus what's already accounted for, that's very difficult. That causes a lot of confusion and it causes a lot of frustration, and it causes a lot of people, quite frankly, to give up on budgeting because it's just too difficult to track. The other difficult thing is this, it's just difficult to track where money's going. Now, unless 24/7, you're reviewing your expenses, you're going through your credit card bills and your bank bills and tracking every single expense, most of us have no idea. If we set one number for our budget, are we on track for that? Are we overspending on groceries this month? Are we overspending on gasoline this month? We have no idea unless we're constantly 24/7 tracking where money goes. To make matters worse, if you spend using a credit card, well, this month you're paying for things you bought last month. Then this month, you're buying things that you won't pay for until a month from now. So it just makes it very confusing as you're trying to figure out where's money going and how do I track this? And this is why so many people just quit when it comes to budgeting. Here's the good news. There's a much better way. Let's actually work through it together so you can see what it looks like. So the first step in understanding how can you design a more effective way of budgeting is really to understand we want to design a system that works with us, with our natural inclinations, with our natural tendencies. And our natural tendency is to not want to have to think about money very much. We need to have a very simple way, a very simple dashboard almost, just to understand, are we on track or not this month? Are we overspending or not this month? To start, we need to categorize our expenses into 3 different categories. Number 1, fixed monthly expenses. Number 2 is non-fixed monthly expenses. And then number 3 is discretionary expenses. Let's walk through why that matters. Well, let's start with fixed monthly expenses. What these are these are expenses that you're going to have every single month. And not only are you going to have them every single month, they're going to be in the same exact amount every single month. So mortgage or rent, it's going to be the exact same amount every month. Maybe your cell phone bill. Maybe it's a Spotify subscription. Maybe it's your utilities. Maybe it's a car payment. Maybe it's insurance. Every single month, for the most part, that's going to be the same amount. So that's important to know, because if we go back to our example that we started with, of say 10,000 per month is coming in, that seems like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money, until maybe you realize that 6,000 of that is already accounted for. When you think of your mortgage, when you think of the recurring bills, these are things you've already committed to, you've already spent, the money just hasn't been sent out yet. So that's step number 1, because it's going to help us hone into not what money is coming in, but what money is left that we can then allocate to different areas of our budget. Let's work through a worksheet together to show you exactly what this looks like. So what I'm going to start with here is, let's assume we put in our income amount. This budgeting worksheet is going to be available to you. It's just in the link here in the resources. And what you're going to start with is maybe you have your income, maybe you have a spouse's income, maybe you have a rental property income, whatever it is, list the amount that is. And this is important to list not the gross amount, which is before taxes or before deductions, but what amount is actually hitting your bank account, because that's the amount that you have to budget. So in this example, I've filled out 10,000 here. Now I'm gonna go through here and just really quickly fill in the rest so we can see what this looks like once fixed expenses are filled in. So what you can see here is all these expenses I just filled out and I just plugged some numbers in. And what you can see, and as you go through this for yourself, you can start to see what amount do I have in fixed expenses. These expenses on the left, mortgage, giving, gas and electric, water, landscaping, etc. These tend to be the same amount every month. So when you put this in, what you'll see is at the bottom of your expenses, you'll see what's total, what's your total fixed expenses, monthly fixed expenses, and then the amount on the right here, you'll see this is left to budget. That's the amount that you still have remaining. So right off the bat, our goal is to create clarity. How much is it that we truly have to work with? Well, we have to start by backing out some of those expenses that are already committed, but we have to pay throughout the month. So far in this example, $10,000 is what's actually coming in. $6,000 of it is already accounted for, which means we have $4,000 for everything else, which takes us to the second step of this process. Once we understand what our monthly fixed expenses are, now it's time to understand what our non-fixed monthly expenses are. What's the difference? Well, the difference is your fixed monthly expenses are the exact same amount of money every single month. Mortgage is gonna be the exact same. Cell phone bill is gonna be the exact same. Non-fixed monthly expenses are those areas that you're gonna be spending money on each month, but the amount could vary. Things like groceries, things like gas. You have to put food on the table, you have to put gas in your car, but those amounts will fluctuate a little bit, depending on how much you're eating or driving or what the cost of what you're buying is. This is a separate category because it's an area that's not gonna be the exact same every month. However, it's good to have an estimate. Let's start plugging numbers in. And I'm just gonna plug in numbers here. Of course, you wanna do this for yourself, but if I put these numbers in for groceries and gas, that's another $1,000. So that's not gonna be fixed. Some months it might be a little bit more, some months a little bit less, but the goal here is to put in a number that you think is very accurate based upon recent budgets and based upon how much you typically spend, because we're trying to narrow down that amount that's actually left over at the end of each month. And so far we started with 10, we said 6 is allocated to fixed monthly expenses, 1,000 is allocated to non-fixed monthly expenses, which then brings us to the third category. The third category is discretionary expenses. Here's kind of something that's a little bit confusing about this, is by the time we get here in this example, it looks like, wow, we have $3,000 to spend. That's money that we can use for entertainment, that's money we can use to go golf, that's money we can use to spend on whatever we want. Well, it's not truly the case, because what we'll see here is this hasn't factored in savings yet, and this hasn't factored in one-off expenses, which we're gonna look at in just a second. I wanna start here though, because this is the area that tends to mess a lot of people up in their budgeting, is they know how much they're gonna spend on groceries, or maybe they know how much they're gonna spend on gas, or they know what their fixed monthly expenses are, but they struggle here. And sometimes it's not just a struggle, but there's a disagreement. If you're married, maybe your spouse wants to buy something that you don't want them to buy, or maybe vice versa. So what my wife and I do, you'll see here, there's spouse 1 fund money and there's spouse 2 fund money. We give each other, or we agree upon an amount that we say, here's our separate fund money. I don't have to ask permission from my wife to spend my fund money. She doesn't have to ask permission from me to spend her fund money. This is just our money to do what we want with friends, to get any toys we want, to do anything we want. And the nice thing is, it's an agreed upon amount each month, but we don't have to agree on what we spend that money on. If I choose to save my money and not spend it for a few months, I could build it up and buy something really cool. If she wants to spend all of her money by the 3rd or 4th or 5th of each month, that's totally fine with me, or vice versa. It's giving us the ability to have an agreed upon plan for our money, but not have to agree on every little thing. If she wants to do something fun, or if I want to do something fun, it bakes freedom, or it builds freedom into this equation here. Now on top of that, you'll see we also have a dining out and entertainment budget. This is really kind of combined, but what's the amount that we're gonna spend on entertainment for things that we're gonna do together? So this is the discretionary amount, and filling these amounts here is gonna start to show you what's left to budget. Now before I actually do this, I wanna go to another area of budgeting that really throws a lot of people off. People sometimes get this perfectly. They look at this and they say, I've got a perfectly detailed budget of how much is going to fixed expenses, to non-fixed monthly expenses, to discretionary expenses, and then, oh my goodness, it's December and we had Christmas gifts and we blew the budget. Or oh my gosh, now property taxes are due and we paid property taxes and it blew the budget. Or we just took a trip and that trip wasn't in the budget and now, oh my goodness, how are we gonna pay off this trip? And what we start to realize is those one-off expenses aren't really all that one-off. They are consistently happening, just not on a regular monthly basis. So how do we account for that? Well, what you'll see here in the spreadsheet is this is how we account for it. We look at this and we look at what's called non-monthly expenses. What this does is we want to understand what are those things that are going to come up regularly, but just not every single month. Is it gifts? Is it property taxes? Is it life insurance if not paid monthly? Is it vacations? Is it car repairs? And what we start to do is this. Let's say that you want to spend $3,000 on gifts over the course of the year. This could be Christmas gifts for the kids around Christmas time, but also birthday gifts or baby shower gifts or whatever it is. You just want to have a gift fund. Well, what I do is I plug in whatever we want to be able to spend on an annual basis, and then this breaks it down into a monthly amount for us. So if I want to spend $3,000 per year, that tells me I need to have $250 set aside in a separate account. So I will literally open up a separate savings account for each of these categories that we want to have almost like a slush fund. We want to have a travel fund. We want to have a gift fund. We want to have a car repair fund. So when those things inevitably happen, it's not hit the panic button and try to figure out, well, where do we pull the money from to get that? It's okay, let's just pull from our travel fund. Or okay, let's just pull from our gift fund. Or let's pull from our car repair fund or car purchase fund. So make these categories what works for you, but really what this is doing is this is protecting your budget from those big blow up moments when there's an expensive trip or a car repair or a property tax payment that you weren't planning for, and then it really busted your budget for that month. So the nice thing is as you start to go through this, let's just plug in some numbers here. As you go through this, what you'll start to see, and make these numbers yours, of course, I'm just gonna plug in some random numbers. What you'll start to see though, is it's going to break this down for you. So if I wanna spend this amount on gifts or vacations or auto repairs or whatever, it breaks down this monthly amount. What I encourage people to do is open a separate savings account for each of these. So have your gift account, have your travel account, have whatever it is, make these monthly recurring contributions, and this is gonna total what those amounts should be, and then that's gonna get pulled over into your fixed spreadsheet here. So this amount here is gonna equal the total there. So now what you can see is our fixed monthly expenses aren't actually 6,000, they're 7,500 once we pull in the things that we need to be saving for on a consistent basis. So now once we've done this, what we can do is we can go back to our discretionary expenses and say, now we truly have what we have left over, which is 1,500 a month. So if we start at 1,000 or if we start at 10,000, we start narrowing that down by what expenses have we already committed to? What expenses do we need to pay for, like groceries and gas? Now we can see what's left over for discretionary. And the other thing to note here is this has not yet taken into account savings. Now, if you're doing your retirement savings and it's all through a 401k, that has actually been taken into account here. Because what's gonna happen is your income comes in, your 401k is deferred, and then this 10,000 in this example, this would be after your 401k contributions have already gone through. So that 10,000 means you've already saved off the top. But if you're not doing something through payroll, we also need to factor in how much are you saving here. So that's where it's gonna differ person to person of do you need to save to Roth IRAs or brokerage accounts, or are you already set based upon what you're doing with your 401k? However, once that's done, this now gives you a ton of freedom. It's a lower amount that you can spend, but you can say, I can comfortably and safely spend this because it's not gonna get in the way of me paying for my normal monthly expenses. It's not gonna get in the way of me paying for groceries or gas. It's not gonna get in the way of me planning a vacation or planning for gifts that I wanna buy throughout the year. This is truly the amount that I want to spend. So that's the main thing, is creating clarity around where money is actually going. How much is going to each of these separate types of expenses. Now, if you're watching this, I know a lot of people say, James, that's great, I like it. I've done that. I've listed out my expenses. I've accounted for the one-off things. I've made sure we're not going over budget. But it doesn't matter, because even if I say this is how much I want to spend, I still have a tendency just to overspend. That's the problem. And here's how I get around that. Is for most people, they get around that either tracking their expenses nonstop, which to me is exhausting. I don't want to have to think about this ever, or else they don't, or else they just don't budget. What I've done is I actually gave up using a credit card for this because what I found was it's too easy to overspend. There's no constraints there. As I mentioned with the credit card, it's just too easy to swipe. Maybe I want to only spend $500 on entertainment this month, but I just keep swiping my credit card. And if I'm not religiously tracking that throughout the month, I might get to the end of the month and say, oh my gosh, I spent way more than I wanted to on that budget or on that line item. So what do I do instead? Well, on the screen here, you'll see this is what my bank account looks like when I open it up. You'll see there's a separate category for entertainment and for grocery and household and for James's money and for Ashlyn's money and emergency fund. And it seems maybe overkill to some people, but I designed this system because all I have to do, if I want to know, are we on track for entertainment? I open up my banking app and see, is there money left? That's all I have to ask. If yes, great. We can afford to go out to dinner again. We can afford to go see that movie. If not, we're done for the month. If not, maybe we need to borrow from another category, but it's showing us or it's placing those constraints of we can't overspend. By having separate bank accounts and separate debit cards linked to them, it's putting a constraint there. It won't allow me to overspend because there's a difference or there's a barrier to how much you can spend there before the account runs dry. I can see the same for my money or for Ashlyn's money or for recurring expenses. And what this is doing is it's allowing us to not have to think about money through the month. It's allowing us to spend, and if I want to know how we're doing, it's a very simple pull up my banking app, see what's left, and when we're done, we're done. There's no more that can be spent, unlike a credit card where it'd be very easy to keep swiping and keep spending. So I have nothing against credit cards, but people come to me and say, well, James, you're giving up points for that. Well, sure, I'd happily give up 1%, 2% cash back or travel rewards in exchange for having a system that keeps me from overspending. In exchange for having a system that gives me total confidence and clarity into how much do I have left to spend in each category and making sure that I'm intentional about where I'm putting money each month. I could very easily take this entertainment budget and make it as big as I wanted to. But what this system does is it very clearly shows me what are the trade-offs for that in terms of how much less would you be able to put into savings? How much less would you be able to put into other categories that are also important to us? And that's what this system really helps us to do. One quote that I think perfectly sums this up is from one of my favorite authors named James Clear. And he says this in his book, Atomic Habits. He says, the idea that change is hard is one of the biggest myths about human behavior. The truth is you change effortlessly and all the time. The primary job of the brain is to adjust your behavior based on the environment. So design a better environment and change will happen naturally. What most people try to do is they try to change their behavior with budgeting, and it leads to frustration and it just leads to things not working out. What this is design a better environment where you don't have to think about it that much. The change will happen naturally when the environment is right. So this is my system. This is something that works really well for my wife, for myself. This allows us to be intentional with our spending and keeps us on track without us constantly having to monitor it. Now this spreadsheet is available for free. If you want to download it, you can get it right from the resources in the link below here. And also, if you're saying, yeah, that's great for how much I spend, but how much do people actually spend in retirement and how does that change over time? Well, be sure to check out this video above to find out. Thanks for watching. This is James Conole with Root Financial Partners. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to share it with someone else who you think would benefit from this information. And also, please be sure to like and subscribe for more content just like this. Finally, if you'd like to see how we help clients create a secure retirement, be sure to check out our website at rootfinancialpartners.com.